Welcome to Swamp Meadow Community Theater's production of A Christmas Carol 2020. These times call for a different way of presenting theater. It's difficult for theater companies such as ours to survive in these times because while we must continue to pay for storage of our sets, props, costumes, and technical equipment, we have no income from ticket sales. We've not had the time to prepare a full virtual show with costumes and virtual sets, but that is something we're looking into doing. Tonight's presentation will be a table read of a new version of A Christmas Carol. This version of the story was written for our times, and with any luck, it will no longer have any relevance within about 10 days. The great danger is that it will continue to be relevant beyond that time. We have several other table read shows coming up. We also will be releasing a podcast serial, Cyrano de Bergerac in Space, and another new play, Therapy, that was written to be performed virtually. Keep an eye on the swampmeadow.org website for details about these upcoming shows. We are not charging for tonight's performance or for any of the other virtual shows that we will be doing. We will accept any donations you may consider appropriate. You may donate by going to www.swampmeadow.org and clicking the donate button. If you haven't maximized your video, it should be somewhere along the side there. All donations are fully tax deductible, and any donation of $1 million or more will come with some naming rights. Our cast this evening includes Dave McLeod, Gary Pickard, Andy Affleck, Becky Adams, Sharon Safford, Jonathan Safford, Rob LeBeau, Eric Dubois, Marin Flynn, Dale Miller, Audrey Dubois, and myself, Dennis Cretion. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
It's November 2016. The opposition candidate concedes the election.
Last night, I congratulated Ebenezer Scrooge and offered to work with him on behalf of our country. I hope that he will be a successful president for all of our citizens. This is not the outcome we wanted or we worked so hard for, and I'm sorry that we did not win this election for the values we share and the vision we hold for our country. Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. It was about the country we love and about building a united country that's hopeful, inclusive, and big-hearted. We have seen that our nation is more deeply divided than we thought. But I still believe in our country, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Ebenezer Scrooge is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power, and we don't just respect that, we cherish it. It also enshrines other things: the rule of law, the principle that we are all equal in rights and dignity, freedom of worship and expression. We respect and cherish these values too, and we must defend them. We've spent a year and a half bringing together millions of people from every corner of our country to say with one voice that we believe that our dream is big enough for everyone, for people of all races and religions, for men and women, for immigrants, for LGBT people, and people with disabilities, for everyone. So now our responsibility as citizens is to keep doing our part to build that better, stronger, fairer country we seek. And I know you will.
Democracy was dead. Dead, dead, dead. There was no doubt about it, but it would take some time before it became apparent to much of the general population. Just weeks later, Scrooge is discussing his plans with his closest advisor, Bob Cratchit.
Cratchit, you know I am the least racist person ever. You know that, ever. But I want to stop all Muslims from entering the country.
Mr. Scrooge, do you believe that all Muslims are a threat?
No, I know it won't national security, but it'll keep my base happy while I set things up to make my properties the only ones that anyone doing business with us will want to use. All international events will be held at one of my properties. They're the best properties, after all. I want all foreign visitors staying in my hotels. I have the best hotels, after all. That's how we take advantage of this. Let's start this today.
But, sir, the emoluments clause forbids that. The press will have a field day with that.
The press is a bunch of morons. call them liars and say they're enemies of the state if they don't support me. If we keep saying it and the loyal press repeats it, the public will buy it and I'll be able to do whatever I want. Now get on it.
Oh, but it's Christmas Eve, sir.
So what? It's a work day for those of you who have to work now. Now get going on that while I watch some TV here. Does anyone know what our ratings are today?
Scrooge despised anyone who was not as wealthy as he believed he was. He viewed with a contempt anyone who was not as ruthless as he was in getting what he wanted. He was a dedicated misogynist, and to those closest to him, a practicing racist. It wasn't so much that he hated anyone in particular, it was that he loathed anyone who was not rich, white, and a male. Anyone not out to get anything and everything for himself. He admired strongmen and dictators because they could do anything they wanted, and no one would dare question them. Most of all, he hated being questioned about anything that he said, whether what he said was true or not. Most of the time, even he didn't know. Over the next 4 years, Scrooge continued his mission of accruing power for himself, because he believed that absolute power would lead to untold wealth and a life filled with fawning sycophants. January 2017.
My inauguration had the biggest crowds ever. Huge. What were those nasty women in pink hats complaining about?
February.
Media is the enemy of the people.
May.
The FBI director must go.
And
We don't need Medicaid or food stamps, and students, they should pay their own loans anyway. Let's use that money to build a wall instead.
June.
All this climate change stuff is a hoax. Who cares about the climate? I have lots of backers who paid big money to get me here, and we have lots of parks and such that have lots of minerals on them, or oil or coal underground. It's clean coal, and if it's not clean, well, we'll just wash it. I want to sell that land to them. I owe them. Oh, I'm getting rid of all those regulations that protect the environment. You just make it hard for people to make money. This climate change hoax has cost business plenty, and I'm putting a stop to that today. As long as there's no pollution affecting any of my properties, what's difference does it make, huh? Any problems that come up belong to someone else.
Also,
The Supreme Court is forcing us to let Muslims back into the country. We need to change the Supreme Court.
July.
I love military parades.
August.
Well, now listen, there were very good people on both sides.
September.
Why can't Puerto Rico take care of itself?
October.
Those kneeling football players are a disgrace.
December.
My rich friends, thanks to my tax cuts, you have just become even richer.
January 2018.
My nuclear button is larger than little Kim's, little rocket man, I call him.
And
And I'm a very stable genius.
in addition,
There are trade wars, well, they're easy to win. Let's put tariffs on everything, except what my family imports, of course. Oh, and we need China to grant some patents to my daughter.
Sir, are you sure that using your position to get patents is a good idea? I mean, it could lead to questions from the press.
The press is all fake news. I call it fake. Do you like that term? I invented the word fake.
March.
I want to be president for life, like my Chinese friend over there.
June.
Kim is my new best friend. He sent me a lovely letter.
July.
The lad said he didn't do it. I believe him more than our intelligence agencies.
And
I'll shut down the government if I don't get my wall.
August.
Those aren't lies.
Lies, alternative facts, it's all the same thing.
September.
He likes beer, huh? He's a perfect fit for the Supreme Court.
November.
That journalist asks questions I don't like. Suspend her press pass.
Amazingly,
It was raining. I couldn't pay my respect for fallen soldiers. Well, besides, the rain would mess up my perfect hair.
December.
I'll shut down the government, I tell you, if I don't get my wall. I'll do it this time for sure.
January 2019.
Okay. We can reopen the government for 3 weeks, but I want my wall.
February.
I'm taking money from the army to build my wall. We can build Mexico later, but this will keep them out now.
But sir, that money was appropriated by Congress for a specific purpose. This could lead to inquiries.
I'll just sign an executive order then, Cratchit. The moron before me used them to try to protect people fleeing shithole countries, and no one did anything about that. This is a national emergency after all. I'm using defense money to defend the country. Just do it.
April.
I need dirt on my opponent so I can be sure I win re-election. Who do we know that wants something from us? I'm sure they can make something up for enough money if I threaten them. In the meantime, start spreading it around that he and all members of his party are involved in child sex trafficking.
Wow, is that true? How did you learn about that?
Well, everyone is saying it. Of course it's true. I just heard someone say it. Just keep repeating it and the loyal news will pick it up. People will believe it.
May.
Hey, Billy, look, just summarize the report to say there was no collusion.
August.
I am the chosen one.
Unbelievably.
I like Greenland. Call them and ask if they'll sell it. I'd like to buy it.
Greenland is a sovereign country, sir. You just can't buy it.
No, you can buy anything, Cratchit, if you offer enough. Hey, I know how we can work this. Offer to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland. Yeah, Puerto Rico is nothing but trouble anyway. Those idiots schedule hurricanes every year or so, and even right after having one. They don't even give themselves time to fix stuff, you know? And then they're asking us to send money to their country again.
Puerto Rico is our country, sir.
What? Are you sure? I'm sure I met the president of Puerto Rico when I brought them paper towels so they could mop up after one of their stupid hurricanes. You know what? She was a nasty woman. Wanted me to help them. I told her she should be happy she got the paper towels. Oh, by the way, how were my ratings for the show in Puerto Rico? There were some good shots of me throwing those paper towels, I thought. I was going to throw some canned goods too, but then, someone told me we had to leave.
September.
Military planes should refuel near my golf course so the pilots can stay in my hotels. Who cares if it's a detour?
October.
We should hold a G7 summit at my golf resort.
November.
It was a perfect phone call, I tell you.
February 2020.
Oh, this COVID-19 virus is horrible. You could catch it just from breathing near someone else who has it. And it's deadly. And not just to people who have other problems already. This is going to be a mess, Cratchit.
Well, we should start planning and coordinating action from here to try to mitigate this as much as possible. But we have to be ready for the fact that some people will die regardless. We need to reach out to the governors and offer assistance. We need to coordinate acquiring the medical supplies that we'll need. We need to plan for ways to support people who will not be able to work because of this.
Cratchit, what are you wearing? There's no way to control this completely. And I'll look bad. I'm going to downplay this. That's it. Here's the official line. Only very old people with severe pre-existing conditions can get it. Everyone else is pretty much immune. Oh, and tell the governors that this is their problem and let them get what they need themselves. I'm not in business to supply them what they need. Help my governors and ignore the blue ones. They're against me anyway. This is from China. Blame them for it. Make it clear that it's not my problem.
But sir, as people become sick, and they will when there's not enough protective equipment, the economy will falter and people will blame you.
Blame the governors and keep encouraging people to go to work. Many of them will have to anyway. That will help the economy. If supplies get low, make it very clear that it's the fault of the governors and that idiot before me. Everything was broke when I got here. Gee, it's not my fault. People don't need protective equipment because this is a hoax anyway.
But you know it's not a hoax. You admitted yourself that it's a serious problem.
Well, keep saying it's a hoax. People accept that. And more will be swayed into believing it. They'll support me in this and blame the other party. Keep saying that the other party worked with China to cause this. That would kill two birds. If I hadn't acted, millions more would have died, Cratchit. You know that. They'll accept any number of dead as long as we keep telling them it's less than it would have been if not for me. Oh, and Cratchit, take that stupid mask off.
And I kid you not.
We should start stockpiling bleach. Yeah. People can drink or inject it if they do become sick.
Sir, are you sure that's smart?
Oh, don't ever use the word smart with me, Cratchit. I know what your IQ is. Of course it will work. I just heard someone say it, but bleach kills the virus, doesn't it? The doctors should be checking with me instead of wasting time with all that science testing stuff.
June.
There are people out front who are rioting against me.
They're just holding a peaceful protest.
They're against me. I tell you, that makes them traitors and rioters. They're violent. Get the army out there and get rid of them. I want that heat ray I heard about. Oh, and get helicopters and jets. I want to walk across the street. Get them out of there now.
July.
I want to pardon my buddy Roger. He stood up for me. Make sure that everyone knows that if you back me, I'll protect you and you won't go to jail. I hate this cancel culture. People want to boycott businesses that support me. That ought to be illegal. I'm going to shut down the business of anyone who supports cancel culture. You know, I think I'm doing pretty well with this show. I have the best ratings ever. Better than The Bachelor. I'm going to renew myself possibly permanently. Since there was so much illegal voting the first time around, I should get a do-over so I can be back after the next 4-year run. I can work to make it a permanent show. If they try anything shady this time around, and you know they will, they're already out sending millions and millions of unsolicited ballots to dogs, cats, illegals, dead people, and children. Everyone is saying it. Since they're cheating, I'll just invalidate the votes and stay here no matter what. What are they going to do about it?
September.
What do you mean? I have COVID? You can't catch a hoax. Now, don't tell anyone. Make sure to tell everyone else who has it not to say anything about it.
We will have to notify the public, sir, and take precautions.
I have a fundraiser and a rally at my golf club. Don't say anything until after that. Oh, and Cratchit, by the way, you're fired. And don't forget that you signed an NDA too on your way out.
The very next day.
I tell you, I don't know Bob Cratchit. I never met the man. I don't know anything about him. But I hear he's a really awful person.
October.
I beat COVID. I'm immune. No more mask. It's nothing to worry about. Like I've been saying, it's no worse than the flu. And as my guy Rudy says, no one dies from COVID anymore.
And
I'll take full responsibility. It's China's fault.
it's the eve of Election Day, 4 years from the start of our story. As was his wont, Scrooge had retired for the evening to his private quarters in the west wing of the mansion in which he lived. Technically, it was public housing, but Scrooge would never admit to that, simply choosing to believe that there were covenants in the deed that he would have to find a way to invalidate. As usual, he was watching multiple television shows simultaneously, focusing on those from networks that were loyal to him. Loyalty was extremely important to Scrooge. A commercial came on featuring his opponent in the last election.
Ebenezer.
Yes. What the hell is she doing on my network?
Ebenezer.
Well, I know what money can buy.
He switched channels, but the same commercial was on. He switched channels again.
I
Ebenezer.
can't believe this. Oh, that
Ebenezer.
is on every channel.
Suddenly, Scrooge realized she was speaking to him.
Ebenezer. I hope you don't mind that I'm calling you Ebenezer, but there's nothing you can do about that. And don't bother changing the channel. I'm on every one of them. Turning the set off won't help either.
Scrooge tried, but she was right. She remained on the screen, and he could still hear her clearly.
Oh, she's hacked my systems. I know our intelligence and security people are incompetent. I'm the only one who could have made this impregnable.
I conceded the election 4 years ago for the good of the country, even though I won the popular vote. But you have not acted for the good of the country even one time since taking office.
I stopped millions of people from entering our country and deported millions more. I sowed division between the races and praised the work of white supremacists, past and present. Well, I've pandered to my base, which has allowed me to gain more power than you ever would have dreamed of having.
But you don't understand. The office you hold is not about gaining power or even exercising it, except when necessary. It's about doing good for people who cannot help themselves.
If they can't help themselves, they're losers, and that's their problem.
You failed to act in the face of a pandemic and allowed hundreds of thousands of our citizens to die because of your lack of action.
Oh, I took action. I stopped people from coming in from those shithole countries, and I told the governors that they should take care of this pandemic thing themselves. It wasn't my problem. I didn't start it, after all. It was up to someone else to take care of it.
You used military force against our own citizens who were protesting peacefully.
They were against me. That means that they were traitors, not citizens. That means they're violent, not peaceful. They were armed with tuna and soup.
Tonight, you will be visited by 3 spirits.
Oh, no one can get in here.
I'm here, in a sense, and there's nothing you can do about me.
Well, I can call my security team in here right
Try.
now.
You'll find that the buttons don't work.
Scrooge did try, but she was right. They didn't work, and his doors seemed to be locked.
These 3 spirits will show you things to try to open your mind and your heart to the plight of others in this world. You have 1 night to try to make things right.
With that, the screen returned to the show that Scrooge had been watching.
How did she do that? Huh? How did she do it? I'm going to have to fire my security people tomorrow.
Scrooge settled back into a night of watching TV, seeking out shows that praised him and his work. Several hours later, another strange show came on.
Good evening, and welcome to History for Idiots.
What the? I must have dozed and bumped the remote or something.
But no matter what he tried, as had happened earlier, the same program remained on the screen, even if he tried turning it off. He couldn't silence the audio either.
Oh.
Tonight, we look at the formation. Tonight, we look at the formation of our great country. Let's look in on some of the lively debate held by the founding fathers.
Oh, jeez. This ought to be great.
He plays the violin. The chair recognizes Mr. Jefferson.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Don't sit down, John. The chair recognizes Mr. Adams.
When annual elections end, their slavery begins.
He's out for presidents to represent him. The chair recognizes Mr. J.
Jay, I don't remember a Jay.
Mr. J, are you there?
Justice is due indiscriminately to all, without regard to numbers, wealth, or rank.
The chair recognizes Mr. Jefferson.
All too will bear in mind this sacred principle, that though the will of the majority is in all cases to prevail, that will to be rightful must be reasonable, that the minority possesses their equal rights, which equal law must protect, and to violate would be oppression.
There's a million things he hasn't done, but just you wait. The chair recognizes Mr. Hamilton.
There can be no truer principle than this, that every individual of the community at large has an equal right to the protection of government.
It must be nice to have him by your side. The chair recognizes General Washington.
As mankind becomes more liberal, they will be more able to allow that those who conduct themselves as worthy members of the community are equally entitled to the protection of civil government. I hope ever to see America among the foremost nations in examples of justice and liberality.
The chair recognizes Mr. Hamilton.
Happy it is when the interest which the government has in the preservation of its own power coincides with a proper distribution of the public burdens, and tends to guard the least wealthy part of the community from oppression, yo.
The chair recognizes Mr. Adams.
There is a danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no man living with power to endanger the public liberty.
The chair recognizes Mr. Jefferson.
Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost.
The chair recognizes Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I had a couple of drinks. You know, it's a long way. Yeah. Yeah, so my cousin's a brewer. What, your cousin's no big prize, Abby? Yeah, keep walking away. What, lies?
Ooh.
Oh, well, the liberty of the press is essential to the security of the state.
The chair recognizes Mr. Franklin.
If all printers were determined not to print anything until they were sure it would offend no one, there would be very little printed.
Wow, why, this is boring. Whoever produced this should be hung. This show has to have the worst ratings ever. Plus, what a bunch of suckers in the cast. They're more concerned about other people than about what they can get for themselves.
And now let's look at how the U.S. gained its independence. It's Christmas Day Eve, 1776. Let's join General George Washington as he and his men make their way across the Delaware River after miles of marching in cold, snowy conditions. The river is dangerous and full of ice as they make their way across in an armada of borrowed rowboats and skiffs.
Yeah, okay. What a loser General Washington was. Why didn't he call in the Air Force after all? A couple of our super duper jets and missiles would have ended things right away. Plus, what kind of leader goes with the people he's leading? I'd never get in a position to be cold like that. That's why I give orders. Other people do that.
Washington and his men took General Cornwallis and his troops by surprise on Christmas morning, winning a major victory for American independence.
That General Cornhole is a bigger loser than Washington. If he worked for me, he'd have been fired already, taking the night off and giving everyone a holiday. I mean, he and his men should have been doing their jobs. You know, if he had done his job, we might still have a king. Never thought about that. Wouldn't that be nice? King Scrooge. I just wanted to be called Your Majesty or Your Excellency.
Ebenezer Scrooge, I am the first spirit to visit you tonight. I have shown you something of elections past. Do you not realize that those titles and forms of address were specifically rejected by President Washington when he was first elected? Do you not see the principles on which the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were based? Don't you see the good in them for the general population?
I see things that try to constrain what I can do. That's what I see. They're obstacles to be overcome. But don't worry, little by little, I'm getting people to overlook and ignore some of these things. With time, we'll have all of them erased from memory, and I'll be free to take total control. Now you go away.
And with that, the screen went black and then returned to Scrooge's regular programming.
Gee, what a waste of time. No wonder there were no sponsors.
After another indeterminate amount of time and a blur of video programming, another unexpected and unwanted program appeared.
Welcome to What's My Beef, the only game show certified by the Nevada Game Commission and the USDA. I'm your host, Ground Chuck. Tonight we have several teams of contestants. We have the detained migrants, the peaceful protesters, and the Patriots militia.
Well, at least one of the three ain't bad as long as they're well armed. I hope.
Each team has 5 minutes to explain their problems and goals, and you, the viewers, can vote to save 2 of these teams to move on to the next round.
Nah, the voting is probably rigged.
First, they came looking for wages, but all they got were cages. The detained migrants.
We tried to come to this country for the opportunity that it offered. This country was founded by immigrants. Do you understand that none of the so-called founding fathers were citizens of this country until they formed this country? The Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." We are fleeing persecution, economic disaster, crime, and hate. We want to do our part to help this country, our adopted home, continue to grow and expand its ability to provide for everyone, as many have done just before us. Now we're being persecuted and sent back when we've done no wrong. We've been separated from our children, and we don't even know where they are or how they're doing. Some of us have been forced to undergo surgical sterilization. Many of us have been in this country for years, legally under the DACA program, but even that counts for little to nothing today. We've been working, paying taxes, buying homes. Our children were born here and they're citizens of this country. And now we're being separated from our children who will have no one to care for them. Who will pay the mortgage on our homes? Where will our children live? What will happen to them? We can't take them back with us because we will be killed when we return to what was our home country. Home country. It sounds strange in this context because this is our home country. Nevertheless, we celebrate what this country has been and still want to be part of it.
What are they complaining about? They're taking advantage of us. That's what they're doing. And they have it better here in our detention facilities than they ever had it in their shithole countries. So they don't want to go back. Too bad. They're only here to kill us and steal from us anyway. Well, why should they celebrate that?
Welcome to a dimension of sight and sound. You have entered the chop zone. Next up, the peaceful protesters.
We disagree with the many actions being taken by this administration. We hate the idea that they ignore and allow, if not outright support, racist actions and racist organizations. We believe that as a country, we should acknowledge our racist past and the systemic racism that exists today. We believe we should eliminate all monuments to racist people and ideas. We know that there are many monuments about which we should have a discussion as to whether they should be destroyed, moved elsewhere, or to which some context should be added. But this should be part of a national discussion. We have gathered peacefully under the rights accorded us by law and in the Constitution. But we've been met by secret military police who have fired upon us, unarmed civilians. Yes, they've used non-lethal weapons, but some of us have suffered life-threatening injuries as a result, all for exercising our rights as citizens. Civilians armed with semi-automatic weapons have been welcomed by the police and praised by our president for shooting unarmed protesters. How can anyone support that? How is that right? Do you know what it's like being afraid to go out in public because you run the risk of being shot simply for doing normal things? Why should anyone be asked if they belong here? Anyone who was born here or is a citizen, regardless of their race, color, country of origin, or religion, has the same rights as every other citizen. But it's not really that way, is it? Something like a cracked taillight might not even get you stopped. but it might get someone else shot. I know a Black surgeon who works in an emergency room, saving lives every day. But he's been pulled over and asked for identification in his own neighborhood. He's even been stopped from entering the hospital where he works and had to have his identity verified by others before he could even get in to help treat the sick and injured. This is not right in a country in which everyone is supposed to be created equal, with equal rights under the law. It's like Animal Farm. Some are more equal than others. Yes, some people say all lives matter. That's true. But it's also true that all lives cannot matter unless and until Black lives matter. If Black lives don't matter, then all lives don't matter.
Created equal. What a bunch of jerks. They're nothing but looters and anarchists. They come into our suburbs acting like they own the place, inviting the MS-13 to come in and kill all of us. They don't support me. They don't support me, then they're traitors and should be shot. Why should anyone support them?
And last but not least, just when you thought the world was round, right on QAnon, here they are, the Patriots Militia.
Ah, okay, this ought to be good.
Thank God for the Second Amendment. We can help the official security forces save us from those radical anarchists who want to overthrow our government. We need to do something about all these foreigners, queers, and so-called minorities who want to tear down and destroy our precious, cherished history and monuments to men who made our country great and what it should be, a bastion of power and privilege for a proud white man and his family. Monuments to our great rebel leaders should be preserved, and those men should be revered because they stood up for what should be.
Hear, hear.
Do you know that these left-wingers actually believe they should be allowed to vote in our elections? They want to be able to live in any community they choose. They want to make us a socialist country. What will happen to us? We're all in danger, and we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Do you know they run child sex rings and run all of the human trafficking around the world? They run the deep state. We're going hunting. And in the name of our country and our leader, will be the final solution to this problem our President Scrooge recognizes. Who's with us?
Yeah, I like this guy. He could be my next Cratchit for sure. Well, it's clear that two of these should be eliminated by the third. The militia group is talking sense, I tell you. I want them on standby for me. I'm voting for them only as many times as I can. The rest of the voting is rigged anyway. I have to do what I can to compensate for that.
Ebenezer, I'm the second of three spirits to visit you tonight. Don't you even see the legitimacy of the migrants and the peaceful protesters team's cases? Don't you see the inequity? Do you see anything?
I see weak, inferior people whining like yourself with the militia. I see strength and power. You know, the good things in life, the things that matter. Now you go away.
Again, the screen went blank, and then returned to Scrooge's usual self-supporting schlock. And sometime later,
tonight we have a special report. Big changes for the people of our country.
What? What the? This must be a mistake. How can anything be happening that I don't know about? Let me check other channels.
Tonight,
No,
I
not
give my
again.
sincere thanks to you, the people of our country. Your votes have given me an overwhelming majority, not only in the popular vote, but also in the Electoral College.
That can't be. The voting was rigged, I tell you.
I know that many people are claiming that the voting was rigged, but the numbers are so overwhelming that everyone is acknowledging there is no way that any disqualified votes will affect the outcome. Thank you all for your support and your votes.
It has to be a fraud. Everyone loves me.
Across the country, celebrations are breaking out, cheering what the citizens are calling the resurrection of democracy. In other news, our former president will be appearing in court on Monday morning to answer to charges of ethics violations, financial fraud, and tax evasion.
Wait a minute, that can't happen. I can't do I can do anything I want. I could shoot a person in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue in front of hundreds of witnesses, and there's nothing anyone could do about it.
These charges were brought forward within hours of his being escorted from his former office, which he'd refused to leave.
I can't go to court, I tell you. It wouldn't look good for me. I did nothing wrong. I did nothing that any other real leader wouldn't do. Well, why, look at Putin, Mohammed bin Solomon or whatever. No one dares take them to court.
For the first time, Scrooge begins to feel fear. And for the first time, he addresses the spirit directly.
Spirit, if that's how I should address you, is there anything I can do to change this future?
Well, we have another special report in the can and ready to go. It's a different outcome. Would you like to see it?
Yes, immediately.
Tonight, we have a special report. Order established and restored in our democracy.
Oh, that sounds more like it. This should get better ratings.
Immediately following the re-election of our great and glorious leader, the ongoing troubles in known anarchist jurisdictions have been stopped. Large numbers of violent rioters in these blue cities have illegally been protesting the actions of our great and esteemed leader. Despite claiming to be peaceful, we know, based on the word of our leader, that these people have been throwing tuna and soup cans at our local and national internal security forces who have been trying to maintain order. Today, in coordinated actions, our security forces, in cooperation with citizen militias from across the country, armed with military weapons guaranteed to them by the Second Amendment, met the protesters with overwhelming force. The few surviving protesters have been taken into custody and will be tried for treason and executed immediately after they are found guilty. This should guarantee passage of legislation appointing Ebenezer Scrooge president for life.
That's more like it. This show is great. Who's the producer of this one? Spirit, what can I do to ensure this show is not canceled?
Actually, Scrooge, that's not up to you. It's
What?
up to the voters of this country. They alone have the power to determine which future you and all of us will see. The lessons given here tonight are for them, not for you.
No.
Citizens, it does not matter if Scrooge wakes up on election day with goodness in his heart. I wouldn't bet on that happening. What matters is what's in your heart. So please follow your conscience and vote this year. Never has it been more important.
Please, folks, go out and vote.
Be sure to cast your vote.
For God's sakes, get out there and vote.
Your voice matters. Your vote matters. Please vote.
Please vote. Vote early even. I did.
Nothing can be taken from you that you don't freely give. Vote.
Please vote.
What are you waiting for? Exercise your freedoms and let your voice be heard. Vote.
No.
Stand up and be counted. Vote.
We'll see you at the polls. Please vote.
For the sake of our democracy, please get out and vote.
I can't believe that.
Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it. We all hope you've enjoyed it. The donation button is still active. So if you can and are able to, please make a donation. We would appreciate that. Also, the recording of this will be available on the Swamp Meadow YouTube site. And if you look up Swamp Meadow on YouTube, you will be able to find the recording. So you can tell other people if they are interested, if you believe they'd be interested in seeing it. Again, thank you very much for being here. Good night.